Hello, everybody. Hello, and welcome to the live stream today. I got good news for you. If you are looking for a job right now, if you're between jobs right now, you are a lot more valuable than you feel. And the entire process is a lot more promising than it seems. And we're going to talk about that today. Today, we're going to talk about a small part of passing a job interview, and that's answering the question, do you have any questions for us? So that's what we're going to explore today. As part of passing a job interview, as part of getting hired, as part of enhancing your career. So that's where we stand. So welcome. There are 4 people here today on this beautiful Sunday morning. Just so you know, I'm doing these live streams Sundays and Wednesdays. That's the way it's kind of materialized, and I'm going to keep going with that for the foreseeable future. And you can find these live streams. I don't keep them on my channel. I move them over to my second channel, The Company's Expert 2. So if you haven't subscribed to that, go subscribe to The Company's Expert 2. And that's where these live streams end up. So there you go. So welcome, everybody. Welcome. If you are here and you can see the chat, say hello in the chat and say where you are watching from. I always find that interesting. And we're going to get into questions a little bit later in the live stream, but we're going to start off by answering this question. And I'm going to try my best to get to everybody's questions, but if for some reason I miss yours, don't despair. If you send me a super chat, I will prioritize the super chats. So I guarantee you a proper answer, full and complete answer to your question in a super chat if I don't get to it or see it otherwise. And I want to welcome you all. So let's get into it. So you're in a job interview, and the structure of job interviews usually are towards the end of the interview, they are going to ask you this question. Okay, after throwing questions at you for the entire encounter, towards the very end, they're going to say, do you have any questions for us? What would you like to know? And if you haven't planned for this, sometimes some people, their minds go blank and you think like, oh crap, what do I say? You know, and you don't want to appear like you don't know what you're doing. You don't want to appear unprepared. And the reality is that if you say to them, you know, I have absolutely no questions, then that's not good. That's a red flag because it gives the impression that you're either uninterested or you're unprepared, okay? Now, both of those are bad. You want the interviewer to think that you care a lot about this job, and as a demonstration of that, you have prepared a little, okay, by researching the company and thinking about the role more, and you probably have questions. So if you say, no, I don't have any questions, that's a red flag. So we don't want to do that. We want to have something that's prepared, that comes out instantly when they ask this question. Okay, so you should give an answer or it can mean bad things, okay? Even if you do a great interview, if they ask you this question, you say, nope, I got no questions, that can be the test. Sometimes recruiters ask this question for that specific purpose. They ask it because they want to see if you pass the test. Okay, a lot of questions at a job interview, either they're wanting to actually know something, okay, or it's sort of like a pass-fail, sudden elimination type question. Not a lot of recruiters admit to this, but it's true. You know, like the salary question is a famous example. You know, it's designed to weed people out. If you say you want more money than they can pay, well, there's no point in really continuing with you as a candidate because you will not work out. You will want more money. You will feel unsatisfied with the money. You might not even take the job if they offer it to you, which is it's a bad reflection on the recruiter if they offer the job to someone who turns it down. Okay, not always, but often that's how it comes across. So this is the issue. So that's why they're asking it, okay? They want to see what you can demonstrate. Now, the other aspect of this, okay, is a lot of candidates, and I've talked to a lot of people, and I've heard a lot of comments and feedback from people that want to ask a hostile question, quite frankly. They want to either make the interviewer feel awkward, or they want to ask a tough question, back to the interviewer to really get the dirt on them. Now, once again, this is not going to be well received. Just as when you're the candidate and you get asked a question that makes you squirm and feel uncomfortable, right? They don't like it either, okay? So, people would ask questions like, well, why would I want to work here? Or something like that. That's not good either. Don't ask like a sort of hostile question or a passive aggressive question. Anything that's designed to make the interviewer feel awkward, okay? Like, for example, let's say you're interviewing with a organization that was recently in the news for something bad, okay? Maybe they screwed up and they did something bad, or there was a scandal, or, whatever, right? Some candidates will ask the recruiter directly about that and say, what about this, scandal or whatever, what's going on there? And I mean, that's going to make the recruiter or the interviewer feel awkward, right? And this is something you don't want to do, because the whole point of a job interview is to make them feel good about you. They want to have good vibes from you. They want to feel like, this is the person we should hire. I enjoy dealing with them. I enjoy interacting with them. They have the right attitude. They're not being difficult or anything like that. So if you ask a hostile question back at the end, that could either make the recruiter personally feel awkward, or it can be just an awkward topic. Like, talk to me about what's wrong with your company. Things like this. That's not going to go over well. So we want to shy away from anything like that. Now, listen, I understand. I get it. You want to know the dirt on the company. Who doesn't? You want to know what you're getting into. Let's face it. When you are up for a job, and if you're fortunate enough to get offered the job, you don't really know precisely what you're jumping into, right? That's a given. And that's the situation that most people are in. They really don't know much about, what they're getting into. And a lot of times it's a bit risky, because you might have, if you're not between jobs, let's say you're currently employed and you're looking for another job, on the strength of the offer they give you, you are going to leave your current job, right? So you have some skin in the game. You have something to lose. So you probably have a ton of questions, and they center around uncertainties or points of like issues and things. So you're tempted to maybe attack those head on and just ask those questions in the job interview. And generally speaking, I would say shy away from anything that makes the interviewer feel awkward or get a bad vibe from you, okay? So that's kind of like, we're sort of setting this up, okay? We're setting up generally the type of response that we want, okay? Now, I see there's some people in the chat. Welcome to the stream today. We got 35 people here, so thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it, and I hope that you're getting some value out of this. So we have, let's see, who we got here? Merely Linked, if I'm saying that right. I'm from India, and is it okay to move to a different country for employment purposes on loans? I don't know what you mean by on loans, but yes, obviously you can move to different countries for employment purposes. A lot of people do that. In fact, the more specialized your qualifications, the more likely you're going to have to relocate. Okay, if you get a degree in marine biology or something, you're going to probably have to relocate. If you're going to be a professor at a university, or that's your ambition, probably you're going to have to go halfway around the world. That's quite common. So the more specialized your background, the more likely you will have to relocate. We have Sasz-Zita. That just rolls off the tongue. Sasz-Zita. I recently had an interview and they asked me a question, what I like and dislike about my current job. Are there some proper answers to this? Yes. What you like and dislike about your current job. I mean, you can, when it comes to the like part, okay, I think you can pretty much be honest, okay? I mean, as long as what you're saying isn't inappropriate, okay? But the dislike part, that's awkward because that's a form, it's a thinly veiled, disguised form of them asking the question, what did you dislike most about your last job? And a rule of job interviews is you never say anything bad about anybody in the job interview, okay? So I would not give them dislikes. I would say, like, if they say, what did you like and what did you dislike? I would say, well, I like this, but I don't really dislike anything. I mean, it's fine, right? I would do it that way. And if they prompt you further, if that's somehow not acceptable for them, you just say, no, I honestly have no real complaints, okay? Whether that's true or not, that's what you say. Because the moment you start saying something negative about anybody, especially your previous employer or your current employer, that's a red flag. You're signaling to them that you're the type of person that talks about people behind their back. And that's a character flaw. And generally, people don't want to hire someone who talks about people behind their back. It means that you're going to talk about these people behind their back if they hire you. That's what you're signaling. That's what you're giving them. So don't say anything negative, okay? It's just that simple. Just that simple. Okay? So I'm going to be alternating, I guess, between taking questions and talking about the main topic of this video, right? If you're just joining us, it's, do you have any questions for us? That's the question they ask you in a job interview, usually towards the end of pretty much almost every single job interview you'll ever do. They're going to ask you a form of this question, okay? Do you have any questions for us? And to start off, after my sort of preamble, one good example is to say, well, can I ask, how did this position become available? Did someone retire, or is this a new position? Okay, so how did this position become available? That's a great question to ask. It's an obvious question to ask, and then just see what they say. Okay, it can provide you some information, not really super important information, but some background detail about the position. Okay, remembering, of course, that anything they say you have to take with a grain of salt. Okay, interviewers generally are representing their organization, so they are not going to say anything negative about their organization, even when that would be the truthful answer, okay? Maybe the reality is that the last person did not work out in a spectacular way, okay? They came to work drunk. They did a whole bunch of inappropriate things. They were terrible at their job. This kind of thing, and then they were fired unceremoniously. They're not going to say that. A lot of times they're not, if that was the case, they're not going to say that to you. Okay? They're going to say, well, we had a last person, but they decided to move on, right? And so we felt that it was time for a change. Things like this. Or they just won't give you that information. They'll say, it's a new position, right? We've had people doing similar things in the past, but really this is a new position. Right, that's a very safe answer. Okay, what you want to do here is you want to ask a few questions that signal that you're interested in the job, that you're prepared, okay, you're engaged, because you want to get hired. That's what you should do to get hired, to appear like the person they should choose. So you got to say something. So that's a good safe question. How did this position become available? Okay. Who do we have here? Ooh, long names. Alexandru. Welcome, Alexandru. If I'm saying that right. A friend of mine was asked, who is your creative hero? This was for a graduate scheme in business. How can one answer this question? Does it have to do with business? Well, I mean, that would depend on what the job is, what the role is that you're up for. If you're up for the role of designer, or it's a teaching position in a fine arts school or something like that, and they say, who is your creative hero? That's a very relevant question. that's going to be almost a technical question to test your skill, right? In that context, because you would presumably be influenced and have knowledge of other artists or other people within that subject matter, right? So this is going to be a test to see, do you know your stuff, right? Okay, I would classify that under technical question to do with the subject matter of the role, okay? If it was in a business context, if say you're up for like a general manager role and somebody says, who is your creative hero? You might presumably want to say the name of some kind of famous business leader that was creative in the way that they ran their company or, whatever they were doing, right? You could say, I don't know, Henry Ford or Thomas Edison or, like whatever business, person that would be recognized. And then presumably you would say why. I like Bill Gates because even though he is the he was the CEO of a large technical company, he came from an engineering background rather than a business background. So that enabled him to lay out the organization from a technical standpoint. And that gave it certain advantages, like I don't know, I'm just making stuff up. But that would be the type of answer. Now, beyond that, say your opinion on this, right? Don't memorize a canned answer, and somebody says a good person to say is this person, Steve Jobs, just keep it real, okay? But it's going to depend on the context in which it was asked. Hello there. Sauce Zeta. Hello. It's good to have you here. One more question. Just wanted to say thanks for all the tips. I've landed several jobs using your guidelines. Several jobs. Okay, well, hopefully they're good quality jobs. Hopefully that's how it goes. But that's great to hear. Thanks, Freddie. Thanks for saying that. Hello from Bucharest, Romania. Yes, the capital of Romania. I worked in the first career job I ever had. I worked with someone from Romania, and he taught me a little bit of Romanian at the time, just a few words. And that's what kept us sane in a horrible job we had together. Okay, one more. Stone Merritt says, listening to you helped me have a great interview, landing me an internship. Thank you. Hey, you did it yourself, Stone. Congratulations. You did an excellent job, and I hope it's going well. Some people get internships, and they can go both ways. They can be either very, very valuable, both from a technical standpoint in giving you skills and experience, and also for networking, right? If you're doing an internship within the industry that, you're hoping to work, right? That can be very useful. While you're there, as much as you can, see if you can capitalize on the networking thing, okay? You can get informational interviews with people in that industry or within that organization now. You can ask for references from all kinds of impressive people that are higher up in that organization. You can ask for letters of recommendation from people like your immediate supervisor or perhaps their boss, which can serve you well later on. So take full advantage of that while you're there. Don't just kind of serve out your time, okay? Try and take advantage of some of those opportunities that you have because you have a window into that world. It will help you later. Okay. So coming back to the question we're talking about, do you have any questions for us that they ask everybody? Pretty much everybody in every job interview you'll ever go to. Okay? We've talked about the context. We've talked about the types of answers and why you should give an answer, how you shouldn't give hostile or passive-aggressive questions when they prompt you for questions. Okay? We talked about one sample question that's really good, is to say, how did this position become available? Here's another one. Okay, here's another great question to ask. If they say to you, do you have any questions? You say, yes, I do have a question. Actually, can I ask, where do you see this industry going? in the future? Are there any changes that are sort of expected to come down the pike in the near future? That would be a great question. Where is this industry going? Okay. Because every business, every type of business you're in, or you could think of, is going to be experiencing change. Okay. The job today is not going to be the same as it was 30 years ago, like in the previous generation. And the jobs in 30 years are going to be different, completely different to what they are now. Okay. Every industry, I don't care what industry you're in. Now, some industries move faster than others, but every industry is going to be experiencing change of some kind. Things are changing. Okay. Whether people want to admit that or not, sometimes, most people do. Things are changing, right? For example, the tools you use are different. 30 years ago, a lot of people weren't using the internet. 30 years before that, they weren't using computers. I mean, that alone, okay, just that alone is a big change. If you want to get the job, you have to be computer literate, right? For most jobs. Not all, but for most. Okay, if you're doing a manual labor job, this is not going to apply, but for most jobs, it will, right? So that's a great question to ask. And you could ask it universally in any situation. Where do you see this position going? Where do you see this organization going? Where do you see this industry going? Right? Okay. So that's a great question to ask. You can modify it. You don't have to use the word industry. You could say like this company or this organization. What changes do you see coming down the pike for this company in the next, in the foreseeable future, you could say. You could give a time frame, like 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, or you could just say in the foreseeable future. Okay, so change in this industry. That's a great question to ask. Okay. And you can change it not just from industry to company or organization. You could also change it to role, right? If this is a role that's been around for a long time, this isn't a newly created role, right, that you're up for. You could say, do you see any changes coming down the pike in the foreseeable future for this role? And let them talk. They'll give you information about the role. And if they say stuff like, we think that these skills are going to be really needed in the future, you say, great, because I have those. Or great, because I'm really interested in that. You score a couple of extra points. Okay? So there you go. I'm running behind on the chats here. I'm going to try and pick up where I left off. Oh, by the way, I have my white balance turned on to auto, but believe it or not, my camera doesn't allow for a brightness to be set to auto. My problem was it kept getting sunnier and cloudier and things like this, and I'd have to manually adjust brightness. I don't have to. I was hoping to get away from that. I just turned on the auto feature, but apparently I can't. You're working with the greatest stuff on the planet when you see that. Moonlight says, hello, I am from California. I do not know if we can ask any questions on live streams. Yes, you can. How can I explain valid and useful experiences with your MBA program to jobs and universities? With my MBA program. Okay, so you're referring to this, right? This is my $100 MBA course. That's what you're referring to. Check out the link in the description. Great way to enhance your career. Hello, I'm from California. How can I explain valid and useful experiences with your MBA program to jobs and universities? Okay, well, look, my MBA program is, it's a course, okay? And for those who don't know what it is for $100, okay? I provide you with the same source material that they use in, top-level universities around the world in their MBA programs. So you're using the same textbooks. You get a reading list. You can buy the books online for very cheap, like sometimes literally $5, okay? And it's a self-study thing. You then read them. Okay. So if you've wanted to learn about business, if you want to do it to enhance your career, one of your options is to go to a university, take a full-fledged accredited MBA program. A lot of times that takes 2 years. Sometimes like the average price is, I think, in the 5 figures. Okay. Could be a little bit lower. It could be like high 4 figures. Okay. But, a lot of people, if you're already working, you don't have the opportunity to do that. So here is something I provided for very cheap, very good bang for the buck. It is not accredited. It's not accredited mainly because there are no tests, no evaluations, no assignments. Okay, in order to be accredited, I would have to test your learning, your knowledge. Have you actually learned it, right? I intentionally don't do that because there are some people out there that are just passionate to learn about business and enhance your careers. And here is a really cheap, convenient alternative. So now that I'm done with the marketing speak, how can I explain this if you're trying to get a job based on that? Well, look, this is not the primary purpose of my program. For $100, this is just to get you the knowledge. It's not going to get you the accredited piece of paper. I mean, you can print yourself off a certificate that says MBA and you can put MBA behind your name. Some people do, right? But it's not accredited, okay? So a lot of it's not going to be recognized, generally speaking. What you can do is, listen, if you have a certification in Lean or Six Sigma, it's the same thing. There is no central accreditation body for either of those. So what they usually do for Lean and Six Sigma in a job interview experience, okay, what they do is you describe your skills and you describe the work that you've done, okay? And what they do is they throw a few technical questions at you in the interview to see if you know your stuff. And that's kind of how they assess people on their Lean and Six Sigma abilities, okay? Because there is no accredited certification. You can't have a certificate in Lean and Six Sigma that's universally recognized. All the companies that provide those certificates are kind of doing what I'm doing. They're just sort of saying, yes, now you're qualified. I mean, I'm not a central authority that's recognized the world over, and neither are they. There is no central authority. So you could try and do that, okay? But results generally speak for themselves. And if you are in a job interview, if you're more so on your resume, a lot of times you would put accomplishments, okay? And for something like management or leadership ability, which is what an MBA goes for, in that case, you would provide accomplishments. You would say, I oversaw a team of 50 employees, direct and indirect subordinates was about 50. Okay, I oversaw a budget of $2 million. I oversaw assets of this much. Okay, and here's my accomplishments. We increased profitability from this to that. I reduced costs from this to that, whatever, right? You give accomplishments. And that is basically what you can do when it comes to this stuff. Other than that, you would just say, well, look, I've taken an unaccredited MBA course. I've studied up on these topics, okay? And I'm competent. And if you've applied them, then you would talk about how you've applied them and how it's helped you. And if they give you a couple of technical questions to show that you know your stuff, then hopefully you can answer them. That's about all you can do, okay? That's what you would do with any unaccredited or unrecognized certification across the board. So hopefully that helps. But that's an interesting question, Moonlight. I've never been asked that before. Let's take a couple more. Okay, I'm still going all the way back here. Grace says, I recently had a job interview and they told me I was unsuccessful. Then they sent me an email. They want to know what is my expected salary. How do I respond to them? Look, I've got several videos on how to answer the salary question. Okay, just the short answer is just give the minimum amount you would ever possibly accept if everything you don't know about the job right now is perfect. Okay, imagine everything you don't know about the job turns out to be perfect. What's the minimum amount of salary you could ever possibly take it for? Okay? That's what you say. Because the only reason they're asking you this question is to see if you want too much money. Okay? So don't fall into the trap. If you're in an interview type situation, if you're having a conversation, it gets a bit more complicated. The most popular video on my channel is called How to Answer, what are your salary expectations? So go check out that video. Tyrone says, is it okay to say you didn't feel challenged in your current role? Yes, I think so. As long as you're not saying anything negative about the company or the organization. It's another form of saying, I'm ready to do more. And that's a great answer. Tyrone goes on to say, as a negative dislike about your previous job. Yeah, I see. I wouldn't say it in that context. I would say, look, if someone said, what do you think of your current job or something? I would say, it's great. It's great. I'm very grateful to the company, and I do, I'm pretty good at the work that I do, and I have a good relationship with everyone there, and it's working out. It's great. It's fine. I just feel that I'm ready to do more. So you can say that, you can indicate that without, talking trash about your employer or your previous boss or your previous coworkers or any aspect of it. Okay? That's very important. Don't fall into the trap. If they ask you, tell me what you don't like about your job, don't fall for it. Just say, no, I really don't have any complaints. It's fine. And if they prompt you and say, no, well, you have to give something about, a bad thing about your job, you say, sorry, I don't want to lie. I mean, I really have no issues about them. They're fine. They're fine. I'm not here because I have a problem with them. I'm here because I thought this opportunity was very, very exciting. Something like that. Just don't fall for it. They're going to put all kinds of pressure on you. In their questions, they're going to put the screws to you to say bad things about yourself. They know the standard deflections, right? How much money do you need? It's well, I don't really know much about the job to really say that. Yeah, but you need to tell me how much money you need. They're going to do this. Don't buckle to the pressure. Okay? They can't force you to say anything. They can't. And all that pressure, you must give us this, that's an illusion. It's an illusion. It's a tactic. It's an interrogation tactic. Don't fall for it. Everybody wants to be accommodating. You want to be very forthcoming and, give them what they're looking for. The problem is that they're trying to find something bad about you. Right? So learn diplomatic, friendly ways of resisting that. That's what helps you pass. Great questions, guys. I'm falling further and further behind here. I'm sorry about that. If you have something really important you need me to answer, just do a super chat. I will make sure I get to all of those. Okay? So anyway, continuing on with that issue of at the end of every job interview, they ask you, do you have any questions for us? Okay. Good answer number 1 is, how did this position become available? Good answer number 2 is, what changes do you see coming down the pike for this industry? That's a great answer. Okay. Now, another thing you could talk about, which is very good, because, a lot of times they won't just be satisfied with one question that you ask. They'll expect you to maybe ask 2 or 3. Okay. A great question to ask, it's like a type of question, is to talk about challenges. What challenges do you see for the person in this role? Right? You're thinking of, you're considering me for this role. what challenges, what do you think will be the biggest challenge for the person in this role? That's a great question to ask, because then they start talking to you about the role. Well, the person in this role, they're going to, the dealing with customers is probably going to be their biggest priority. They say something like this, and you can respond to it. You can say, great, because I have a lot of customer service experience. I'm great at dealing with customers. I'm happy that you said that. Right? This is a great question to ask. Okay. What challenges do you see coming down for, it's going to be the biggest challenge for this role? And like usual, you could extend that to this company or this industry. What's the biggest challenge you see for this company in the next couple of years? Right? That's a great question. Number one, they will probably have an opinion on that, so they will have a lot to say. Number two, they are interested in talking about that. It affects them. It's not some random thing that doesn't have to do with anything. It's directly pertinent to this. It's directly pertinent to them. They'll have a lot to say. Okay? It's also an intelligent question, because if you end up being the person they choose, this will be of primary concern to you, right? So great question is the challenge question. Okay? So a lot of these things, as I say, you could talk about the role, you could talk about the organization, or you could talk about the history. Challenges for the role, challenges for the organization, challenges for the industry. Right? I mean, if you can't think of anything else to say, there's your three questions. And by the time they get through talking about these, the time will have passed. So there you go. Right? I don't know where I left off here. I'm so far behind. I'm just going to pick up. Listen, thank you all for being here, and thank you for the intelligent questions. Hello to Maria. Hello to Hudson. Hello to Ashutosh. I'm sure I'm not saying that right, but thank you for being here. Sue Wang. Sue Wang says, how would you answer the question of what is it that would set you apart from other candidates? I have a video on that. Go check it out. Short answer is, if this question is asked by a hiring manager and you're not at the entry level, you're like at a manager level, somebody who has to think as part of their job, not just do, not just follow instructions. You have to decide what to do. Okay. If you're in that type of role, where was I questioning it? Oh yeah, here we are. Okay. What sets you apart? Then they actually want to hear something that sets you apart. Okay. But if you're in any other role, especially like an entry-level job, or if you're dealing with a recruiter, okay, this question is a smokescreen. They don't actually want someone that stands out. They want someone that meets all the requirements. That's what they want. That's what their job is. That's what they're there to ensure. Okay? So don't fall for that. This is another, if they're asking this at sort of a low-level job, or it's a recruiter asking it, either or, usually it's a trap. It's another one of those pass-fail elimination questions. They're not actually interested in what sets you apart. They're interested in getting the dirt on you. Okay? So I've done videos about that. Check them out for a more detailed answer, but that's what's going on. Okay? Like, think about it. If you're hiring for a large company, okay, you've applied for a job in a large company, and it's a sort of base level job. It's a worker level job. You're a software developer. Okay. Now, most companies, especially big companies, they don't just hire one software developer. They hire 50. Okay. They've got 50 or 100 or 500 working for them, right? Okay. Do they really want something that sets you apart? No, they don't. What they want is a highly technically competent software developer that gets along with people. and follows the rules. That's what they want. That's their perfect candidate. And they're going to hire the best technically competent software developer who best gets along with people and best follows the rules. That's what they're going to hire. They're not going to hire the crazy software developer that wears all fluorescent orange every day. Okay? Who only drinks orange juice all the time. Who wears orange tinted sunglasses and never takes them off. They're not going to hire that person. That's not what they're looking for. That's risky. Okay? I don't care what they say. That's not what they're looking for. If the recruiter hires that person and then that person doesn't work out, how does the recruiter look? They look like an idiot. They look like they're incompetent and have no clue how to pick the right candidate. Because just looking at that person, they look kind of a bit odd. And then if they don't work out, you think, well, the person who chose them was a moron, right? They clearly didn't have a clue what they were doing. The recruiter doesn't want to look bad. In large organizations, people care about one thing first, and that's not being blamed for something. That's large organization thinking. Priority one, cover your butt. Okay? So if that's the situation you're in, which a lot of people are in when they go to job interviews, it's that kind of situation. Okay? They might ask you this question. So, what makes you unique? What sets you apart, If you have to give an intelligent answer to that question, you could say, well, my unique combination of skills sets me apart. And then they say, what's that? And you say, well, and then you go down the requirements. These are the things that I have in spades, right? I'm serious. That's what they want to hear. They've said, we're looking for these things. The recruiter is paid to find candidates that have all of these things. And a lot of them. They don't just have each one of these a little bit. They have them a lot. Okay, they're good at all these things. That's what they're being paid to do. So your job in the job interview is to communicate to them, guess what? I have all of these. My purpose is for you to leave this interview thinking that I have every single thing you're looking for. And starting with the things that you've already stated in the job posting that you're looking for, and then all the other things that you're actually looking for too, that you didn't explicitly state. Things like, you're super friendly, I get along with you, you're a very pleasant, charismatic person, you're easy to deal with, you're punctual, things like this, stuff that they haven't listed specifically. That's what they're looking for. They're not looking for the crazy person that stands out in the crowd. They really aren't. Despite what they say. Okay? It's liberating for me to say these things because, if I was still representing an organization, I would say the opposite of this. But this is what's actually going on. And don't take my word for it. Go verify this. A lot of you will be verifying this through your experiences, not just listening to someone's supposed expert opinion. You'll verify it through your experiences. Okay? Now, if you have some great accomplishment that demonstrates you have something they're looking for, that's perfect. It doesn't set you apart. Nothing really sets you apart. Like when you think about it technically, if you're a technical person, when you think about it, does anything really set you apart? No. No, there's always someone else in the world who has done that. Okay? Somewhere. They might be halfway around the world, but they're there, right? I know that's it's not really pessimistic. It's more realistic, but it's not a bad thing. It's just this question is a smokescreen. It's another attempt to get you to reveal something about you that could be a red flag. And they're like, you see, thanks to my advanced interviewing skills, I got this candidate to reveal that they are actually unsuitable. I got the dirt on them. Aren't I a great interviewer? Oh, I'm losing. I'm losing the battle with the stream here. Hello to Aaron. Hello to Tyrone again. Lauren. Lauren saying some very nice things. Thank you, Lauren. You're awesome. Liberty Squad. There's a name. Liberty Squad. Where do you see yourself after 5 years? Check out my video on that. Teresa, always wanted to know about this question. Thanks for your great. Okay. Yeah, my pleasure. Sue Wang says, thanks a lot. I got the question from HR in the first talk. Okay, good. Yeah, look, job interviews, they're really unoriginal. You go to a job interview and I think there's 7 questions they ask. Literally 7 questions, okay, that they're going to ask. And then they'll ask more, but the other ones will be technical questions about the role. They'll be testing your knowledge, okay? Right? If you're up for a supervisor job, they'll ask you a technical question. What would you do if an employee came to you and said, I refuse to do what you told me? Something like it's like a technical question. Do you know your stuff? As a supervisor, what's the right answer, right? They're asking you technical questions. Other than the technical questions, there's only like 7 questions that they're ever going to ask you. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses, right? The future question, where are you going to be in 5 years? Salary question, how much money do you need, right? Past question, why did you leave your last job? Things like this, right? Like there's only 7, okay? They're going to phrase them in different ways. Sometimes they're going to be phrased quite different, but it's going to be the same 7 questions, okay? So all you have to do is learn the answers, okay? Figure out what your answer is going to be, because everyone's going to have unique answers. In my opinion, don't listen to people that say, like, here's a paragraph, now say this paragraph and that'll get you the job. No. Like, put it this way, that might work sometimes, but recruiters, their job is to try and see past that. That's what their job is. Okay, and they do job interviews as their 9 to 5. Okay, so they've heard every answer. They've done interviews with every type of person. Okay, and they've heard it all. And they try to engineer their interview questions to sort of probe to get past that sort of surface level baloney to what you really think. Okay, so you're going to have to tailor your answers to yourself. Okay, so figure out what the answers are to those questions, rehearse them, do a lot of mock interviews, okay? Get like a friend or a family member. That's better than nothing. Like, if you're an executive, you can hire HR firms that will do this with you. They will do mock interviews with you. It's like a pretend interview. And then at the end, they'll tell you how they think you did. And they'll give you some feedback. Here's what you should try and improve on. Here's what you did great. Okay. But, look, if you don't have millions of dollars, a friend or a family member will do. Okay. It's just rehearsal for you to start to get comfortable answering these questions when you're nervous. When you're nervous, you generally can't think. You can't think on the spot. A lot of people can't. I certainly can't. When you're being grilled, like if you have a panel interview, you got 3 or 4 people like asking you questions, and you got 3 or 4 people staring at you, and you feel nervous and the pressure's on. You can't think in the moment. You have to fall back on how you've prepared. Okay, if you've just got, it's heuristics. You've got sort of a default answer for a certain question. That's what you fall back on. So all you got to do is learn those 7 questions or so, and learn to recognize them in their different forms. Okay, and then rehearse, prepare. That's all you have to do. And the other aspect of this, like a lot of you guys know that we've talked about before, is job interview. It's a numbers game. Job interviewing, getting a job is a numbers game. It depends more on random chance than it does on you. Okay? Honestly, it does. A lot of younger job seekers kind of have a problem with that. They don't really believe that, but it's true. Okay? You know, if you don't get a job, the number one thing you should know is don't take it to heart. Don't develop like this inferiority complex, like, oh, I'm just no good. I'm not good enough. That's completely incorrect. A lot of organizations are looking for very specific things. Sometimes you have them, sometimes you don't. Some of the things they're looking for are ridiculous. So if you don't have them, it's actually kind of good, you know? It makes you a very hireable, very capable person in most other situations if you don't have that thing. But they want this thing. They want it because the manager is an idiot, okay? I've supervised managers. I've worked with managers for years and years. And a lot of them are good. A lot of them don't have a clue what they're doing. Honestly, people that got promoted based on the fact that they're yes men, they give the right answer, they minimize conflict, or they're just friends with the boss, you know? And then now these people are hiring you, right? And then they're telling you you don't measure up because you don't have this ridiculous thing that they seem to think is necessary. It's funny, as I talk, as I go on this little mini rant, I see the number of people listening going down. So I'll shut up now. But no, I mean, I'm saying this because this is the stuff that I wished that I had known when I was like 20, whatever I was, 21, 24, whatever it was, coming out of school, coming out of university, getting for my first career jobs. This is the stuff I wish I had been told. Anyway. Okay, oh, where are we? Here, let's see. Paul's here. Hey, Paul. Paul says, what if a headhunter trying to resell me to higher management position with same salary? What? I don't really do that, but should I continue interviews with the new potential employer just for practice? I don't fully understand your question. You need to phrase it a bit better. But I get the gist of, should you continue with an interview just for practice? Yeah, it does no harm. The more job interviews you do, the more experience you get, and the better you get at interviews, not just at interviews, but at other similar situations, okay? Being put on the spot and being able to rise to that challenge is a very important skill, okay? It's sort of an extension of like public speaking skills, where in the beginning, everybody is nervous to a certain degree. But then if you practice it, there are many benefits. Number one, you get better at public speaking, right? In this case, you get better at doing job interviews, which is good. It can also help build confidence, okay? Because you sort of resemble the recruiters and the hiring managers. They do a lot of interviews. They've heard everything. So nothing surprises them, nothing throws them off. A lot of times, that's the effect of experience, right? We all know this. So yeah, if you do job interviews, if you were offered an interview for a position that you discover you're not really interested in anymore, right? There's absolutely no harm in taking it. It's actually might be a good thing if you take the interview. It's good for you. Good for you. Good morning, Christine. Christine says good morning. Thank you for the live show. Fifi says, thank you for the live show. What about the question that is your weakness? Well, I've got videos on that. Don't say a real weakness. Don't listen to the people, in my opinion, that tell you, oh, just answer honestly. Because that privilege is abused. If they say, what's your weakness? You give them an honest weakness. I'm no good at this. They say, thank you. Thank you for your candor. And then they ghost you because you failed the interview. They eliminated you based on that. We don't want to hire that person. They're no good at this, right? It's deceptive, but that's what we're doing here. It's a negotiation. It's like playing a game of poker with somebody. You hide your cards. You don't lie outright, but you don't disclose everything. You have a firewall between, and you have a brain to mouth firewall, right? Where you don't say the things that are going to harm you in their eyes. You only say the good thing about you. You're selling yourself. Lauren, I've got an interview this week. I'm nervous. Don't be nervous, Lauren. You're going to do fine. Okay? And I mean that. I mean, look. Okay. As I said, it's a numbers game. Go in there, do your best. Okay? If you get it, you get it. If you don't get it, you don't get it. But there will be other opportunities. There'll be a lot more than you think. They'll come a lot sooner than you think. Okay? You're going to be fine. Practice makes perfect. Learning the really important stuff is never easy. But if you stick with it, you'll be a master. Okay? I mean, I can't tell you how many thousands of times I've failed at various things. Right? But that's the secret to learning. It's a lot better than all the other people that kind of, some people that have been peers of mine that never even tried to do these things. They haven't failed as much as me, but they haven't accomplished as much as me, and they haven't learned as much as me. And that's going to be you too. Okay? The more you do, the more you win. Okay? Remember, it's a numbers game. It's random probability. Do your best, and then it's like rolling the dice. Okay? The more opportunities you have, the more likelihood you're going to get hired. And if you keep doing it, sooner or later you will. Don't just practice one method of getting a job. Look into multiple methods of getting a job. Okay, that's the other thing you can do. Okay, Perrine, if I'm saying that right. Perrine says, I applied for the management position and I met all requirements, but there are many candidates, so I think during interview, I plan to show them the PowerPoint about the plan I made and innovation. What do you think? Is that too much for an interview, or is it just have normal conversation? Well, look, it depends on the context. Like whether that's too much depends on what position, what company, what their expectations are, and what they've told you, right? It's not necessarily a red flag. That's like a lot of interviews. Interviews can get very complicated. You can have to do PowerPoint presentations. You could have to give samples of your public speaking abilities, samples of your debate abilities, samples of your negotiation abilities, depending on what position we're talking about. Okay, so that in itself is not necessarily bad. But listen, if you don't know quite what's expected of you in the interview, if you're thinking like, should I do a PowerPoint or should I not do? Maybe ask them, go back and say like, hey, just got a quick question. Are you expecting me to present a PowerPoint presentation during my thing? Would that be kind of within what you're looking for, or is that kind of not really typical? Right? Just ask them that and see what they say. If they'll give you information, don't leave it to guesswork if you can try and get the answer. That's all I'll say. Okay. Returning to the question. Right? Returning to the question. When they ask you at the end of pretty much every job interview, do you have any questions for us? Okay? And you don't know what questions to ask. I've given a few so far. Here's some more. Okay? Another type of question to ask is something that's personal to the interviewer. Okay? So if there's a recruiter sitting across the table from you, and they say, do you have any questions for us, before we leave? A great thing to ask is something personal and say like, what's your favorite aspect of working here? What do you like most about this company? Okay. That's a great question to ask. Okay. It gets the person talking, right? And they're talking about something that they know a lot about and they have strong feelings on, right? Which means they want to talk about it. Okay, it relates to them. So that will get the person talking. If you want to sort of have it less formal, more of a friendly conversation, that can help achieve that. Okay. What do you enjoy most about working here? You could ask hypothetical personal questions. Say, if you were CEO of this company, What would you do? Where would you take it in the future? Or something like that. Okay. Now, some people have mentioned, like, if you were CEO of this company, what would you change? Right? That's a negativity question. What's not good about this company that you would change? That's not a great question to ask, because you're asking the interviewer to say something bad about their own company or about the company they're representing. That's usually not a good thing, okay? Like we've talked about at the beginning of this live stream. Okay, but asking a positive question, saying like, if you were in charge of this company, what would you do in the future? Or what's your favorite aspect of working here? That's a great question to ask. Okay. These questions, they give different effects. Okay. If you're wanting to lighten the mood, here's a question. If you're wanting to get useful information about the job, here's another question. Things like that. Like if you have different goals. Okay. Another one that you could say is, if they say to you, do you have any questions for us? You could say, well, could you describe the typical day for the person in this role? Right? It's one thing to talk about the requirements for the job. It's another thing to understand what they're going to be spending most of their time on. Right? That's a totally different thing. Okay? You may need these different skills, but let's say these skills that they're asking for, you only use those once a year. Whereas these skills, you use 7 hours a day, right? So sometimes it helps to get that insight into what the role actually involves, okay? For example, if you're a supervisor, you could be answering questions. You could be, policing the employees, like, making sure they're working, making sure they're following the rules. You could be resolving disputes. There's different things that a supervisor would do, right? Are you going to be doing all of those equally, or are you going to be doing one 99% of the time and the others like very rarely? That would be useful to know, right? And then once again, whatever they say, if they say, oh, you're going to be doing this most of the day, you say, great, because I enjoy doing that and I'm an expert at doing that, right? You get a couple more bonus points. Okay, so these are good questions too. Okay. I'll do one more actually, since I'm here. Okay, so those are good questions. Another great question you can ask, okay, that comes across as very intelligent, and it's certainly very pertinent and gives you the opportunity to get some bonus points, is by saying, what are your expectations? What are your expectations? If I was in this role, what would be your expectations for me in the first 30 days, or the first 60 days, or the first 90 days? Okay? That's kind of another form of the previous question that I gave. It's like you're getting more information about the role, right? They say, well, at the end of 30 days, we expect you to be working without supervision. You know enough to be productive on your own, okay? You would be supervising the employees, you'd be doing this. We would still be giving you training on the technical aspects of the role, but all the supervisory stuff you would be handling yourself by that point. And that's more information for you. So you know what you're getting into, okay? Once again, you can say excellent, because I'm hoping I won't need very much time to get up to speed with the supervisory aspects. Okay, I can do that right now. I've been doing that for years, so I don't see that as a problem. And they go, oh, okay, good candidate, shouldn't be a problem. Less risky, right? Puts you in the lead. Okay, so that's also a great question. Let's get back to you. We got some questions here. David. David says, hello, everyone. Hello, David. I'm glad you're here. Adrian Pavel. How should a guy searching for a job approach the interviews and recruiting process after he was fired from the previous job 6 months ago. 6 months ago. Well, I've done a video that hopefully will explain most of that for you, called what was it? It's the past question, like why did you leave your last job? Best answer. Okay. So go check that out. That's kind of the definitive answer. But to just discuss this a little, look, if you were fired from a previous job, I mean, obviously it depends on the details, what's going on. A lot of times, it's not your fault, I mean, depending on what the details are, depending on what company you worked for, what environment it was, there's a whole bunch of reasons why someone can get fired, and I would argue that it's overly harsh. It depends. There are some things that do justify that. Other times, it's part of the learning process, okay? I mean, listen, when I was in my 20s, I mean, you don't know where the line is that you can't cross sometimes with employers, And so some people learn that the hard way, So number one, don't look at it as it's like some kind of automatic death sentence or something. I mean, it's not. Okay. The second thing is, like I say in that video I just mentioned a minute ago, you don't have to disclose that if you don't want to. Like if they ask you, why did you leave your last job? You don't have to tell them you were fired. Okay. You're not in a court of law. They don't have the right to demand an answer from you. Okay. They're going to try and get the dirt on you, okay? Now, there's a lot of people out there I know, coincidentally, a lot of them are recruiters. Recruiters are going to tell you how to answer a question to a recruiter, right? I'm always, I mean, when you look at, sometimes there's a conflict of interest there, okay? But they will say, just be honest. And I think the standard answer is for them, what they say is, just admit that you were fired, disclose the whole thing, and then say, this was the reason, and this is what I've learned. I've learned that you shouldn't do that. I'm never going to do that again. And then throw yourselves on their mercy. That's what they'll say. The problem with that answer is that it violates one of the key principles that recruiters follow when making decisions about selection, like in the selection process. And that is that they believe, this is an established fact, I've taught this to recruiters in university, past behavior predicts future behavior. Okay? This is something that they fall back on. That's why they ask you behavioral questions, like, tell me about a time you did this. Right? It's because whatever you say you did, that they're going to make the assumption that if they hire you, that's what you will do. Now, we all know that that's not necessarily true, okay? But here you have a situation where somebody had a previous job, it didn't work out, they were fired. Now, they don't know anything about you, but they want to know about that. So let's say you tell them, I was fired. There was a difference of opinion between myself and my boss. They claim this, I claim this, and they fired me. Right? Now, when it comes down to these HR principles like past behavior predicts future behavior, the problem with this is that if you tell them all about this, they're going to assume that, okay, so if we hire this person, this is what will happen. This is how they will behave. They will not know how to act, and they'll get themselves fired from this job if we hire them. Right? Now, these people don't know you. They don't know you. You could be the most brilliant person to have ever walked the earth. But all they know about you is that your name is Adrian and you were fired from your last job. Right? Would you hire a person like that? No, you wouldn't. Okay? So the purpose of the job interview is to sell yourself. It's to give your good points while withholding your bad points, or your bad points that could be misconstrued. We have all failed at things in life. what they're going to do is they're going to try and ask us about them. And if we give them full and complete information, how we failed and we're no good at this and this and this and this and this, they're not going to hire us. Have you ever gone to Amazon and you're interested in like a product or something, and you read all the 1-star reviews about that product, right? If that's all you know about that product, would you then go and buy it? No, of course not. That's what's going on here. Okay? So if you're fired, don't despair, okay? Just try your best to not disclose that. And if they do ask you, just say, it was time to move on. Right? That's not technically a lie. But you're not giving them all this because they're going to misinterpret it. If this is the only thing they know about you, they're going to make a decision based on this. And a lot of times it's wrong. I mean, that's the whole job interviewing process. That's recruitment and selection in a nutshell. It's making assumptions about people off very superficial information, very little information, Right? So anyway, so go check out that video on my channel called Why Did You Leave Your Last Job? Best Answer, I think it's called. It's one of my more popular videos. You're welcome, Lauren. I'm glad you're here, and it's nice to hear the nice things you're saying. I appreciate it. You're awesome. Paul again. My good buddy Paul. Me and Paul, we're like this. Okay. Paul says, external headhunter trying to offer me a higher position in another company, but with no salary increase against the current position. What should be a reasonable salary increase if the position is higher? Okay, Paul. Here's the deal. Speaking as somebody who's been the CEO of a company, who's got a master's degree in finance, and who has taught HR, here's the deal. There is no agreed on value for a person in any role. It's all smoke and mirrors. It's whatever you can get. Okay? I talked about this a little bit in a live stream I did about salary. And I've got a lot of videos on my channel about salary. There's one that's like an hour long where we talk a little bit about this. How do you determine how to pay somebody? Seniority, the more experience they have. If they've been doing the same job for years, does that make them better? No, not necessarily. A lot of times they slow down, right? As they get older. Is it based on the amount of money they generate for the company? Or the amount of money they save? Do they get a fraction of that? If so, how much? Okay. Is it based on how much their boss makes? It has to be less than their boss, but more than their subordinate. Right? Is it based on how much other companies are paying people in a similar role? Does that give you the right to make more money automatically? Right? I mean, these are questions. There's multiple ways of valuing things. People can be valued literally 12 different ways. Okay? Companies can be valued 15 different ways. Okay? There is no consensus. What they end up doing is they sort of look at several of these, right? Okay? It gets more complicated too. It's is it based on your knowledge and qualifications? Even if you don't apply that knowledge and qualifications in this role. If you're a PhD that they've employed as a janitor, should you be paid the same as a professor in a university? Or should you be paid the same as a entry-level janitor, right? There is no right answer, and there is no put it this way, there's no universally accepted answer. It's whatever you can get away with, whatever you can negotiate, and whatever the other party is willing to do. It's also based on supply and demand in the labor market, right? So all of these factors are kind of all going at the same time, right? It's very fuzzy. It's not really a science. It's more of a, I don't even want to call it an art. It's just the sort of, more like a comedy of errors, really. Okay, so if they're wanting you to do more, but they give you the same amount of money, then obviously it's not really worth it. However, you've got to look at your compensation. What are you getting out of it? Okay. Now, part of that compensation will be financial. It'll be the amount of money you make. There'll also be things like what we call indirect compensation, which is benefits, things like this, right? Maybe the position is closer to your home, so you spend less time every day commuting. There's less gas money, things like this. Also, is there an ego factor? Like, do they give you a fancy position that then you can put on your resume? Okay. Are there networking opportunities in that company where you can get glowing letters of recommendation? You can rub shoulders with important people that can get you even better jobs in the future, right? These are all sort of indirect forms of compensation, non-financial compensation. Okay. Is the work more in line with what you enjoy doing? Right? That's also a factor. Do you work with really nice people, that don't stress you out, don't make you feel like you're this tall? When you come home from work every day, you actually feel good. Okay. These are all factors. Don't just look at the financial compensation. Financial compensation is very important, but it is not everything. Okay. So, maybe this new job would be a career stepping stone, right? That would open doors for you. So, there's all of these things to consider. And, there's so many variables that you can't really approach it very scientifically. Okay. Even with probabilities and risks and things like this, you can't even analyze it because a lot of them are just unknowable. Right. So, consider all of these factors. And if there's a way to do it that manages the risk, you don't want to say goodbye to a great position you have to get something that, for all they'll give you an offer, and then by the time you accept the offer, they'll rescind it. You know what I mean? That doesn't happen very often, but it has been known, right? So there's an element of risk with everything. Okay. If you're young, I would say go for it. If you're older, I would say be more conservative. Stick with what you have. Okay. I mean, it's something that we all have to decide for ourselves. I know this is very wishy-washy and probably not very helpful, but at least it's sort of what I'm trying to do is put the problem in perspective. Okay. There's many factors. So just think about all that stuff. And what I've learned as a technical person who doesn't go by intuition. I go by fact. I go by explicitly stated, quantized criteria. I've learned to go with my gut for some stuff because some of these big decisions, they're too big to analyze in a quantitative way. So that's just me. But I mean, hopefully that somewhat helps. What to say when asked about a career break? Triple X Gaming. Well, I've got a video on the work gap, right? That's what it's asking about. Listen, the way recruiters regard a work gap has completely changed since the events of 2020. Before 2020, it was much more of a problem and much more of a red flag. That's how it was viewed. Since 2020, people are a lot more forgiving about it. If you've had a work gap at any point in the past, nobody cares anymore unless it's a current work gap. So if you're out of work now and your last job was like 2 years ago, they will care about that. That will prompt some questions, okay? What you would like to do is not say, I was between jobs. I was looking for a job, because the way these people think, they're paranoid, they're risk averse. What they're thinking is that, if you couldn't find a job in 2 years, there's probably a reason why that we're not seeing yet. There's probably something wrong with you that's preventing anyone from hiring you. Okay? That's what they're going to assume. I mean, a lot of times that's not true, but sometimes it is, but a lot of times it is. And that's what they're going to assume. They want to stay away from situations like that. You become a higher risk candidate. So what would be nice to say is not that I've done nothing or I've just been looking for jobs. It would be to say, I was going back to school. I was taking training. I was doing volunteering, things like this. Okay. And if you can't say any of those things truthfully, I would go and take some really quick course online. You could take my course, you could take any course. Take a free course. And then when somebody asks you, what's this work gap all about? What have you been doing? You could say, well, I've been taking some training. I've been revamping my skills. And then maybe give a reason, because I'm interested in this, or because I was considering a career change to this, as long as this is the career of the new job they're interviewing you for, right? Okay, something like that. And then that's very benign. That's a good justification in their eyes. They go, oh, okay, fair enough. And it's no longer this big risky kind of thing that paints you as a high-risk candidate. Okay, so good question. Oh, time for a Red Bull break. What do they say? It hits the spot. And freshens your breath. Or not really. Your breath smells like you drank like a gallon of apple cider, but whatever. Okay, so getting back to everybody's favorite question, the topic of this live stream, which is, do you have any questions for us? Here's yet more on it. Okay, some important points. A great question also that you could ask, an option you have. And this, I would reserve this one if you had a good vibe about the interview. But if you had a good vibe, this can be a very powerful question, okay? The question is to say, can you describe the types of people that are generally successful in this role? Okay? You're at the end of the job interview, they say, do you have any questions for us? You say, yes. Can you describe the types of people that are generally successful in this role? And they'll give you some insight into the role. They'll say, oh, well, to really excel in this role, you would have to have good technical chops, or you'd have to have great sales ability, or you'd have to really enjoy talking to people, right? Whatever they say. And it gives you the opportunity, not only do you learn about the role, but then you could say, I'm awesome at that. That's great. Yes, right? And you get some bonus points. Okay, so that's another great thing you could say. Can you describe the types of people that are successful in this role? Generally. And this question also is a great litmus test for how well you did. A lot of times we go to job interviews and we don't know how we did. Right? They won't tell us. They won't be honest. They signal how you did when later on they ghost you and they just drop off the face of the planet. That means you didn't get it, right? If they call back promptly and they say, yes, yes, we're moving forward, can you make a second interview right here? This date, time, place, right? That's how you passed, right? So it's usually, a question I get a lot is people haven't heard back from the interviewer in a certain amount of time, in 3 days, 5 days, 2 weeks, 6 months, whatever. And they say, I don't know, I'm kind of worried. I haven't heard anything back. Do you think they're going to call me back? Right? Because we don't know how we did. Well, this question can be a litmus test to tell you how you are doing, okay? If you can read their body language on how enthusiastically they respond to your questions, that can be a good indicator of how you've done in the interview. That's another reason to ask questions, okay? if they seem like they're just not really interested in answering your questions and giving you a lot of information, that's not a good sign. If, on the other hand, they're happy to talk to you and they tell you all about the job and the role and where they think it's going and what changes are coming and what challenges you're going to be facing, then chances are they've got you down as a pass. Okay, so that's the other aspect of this question that is not often talked about. I mean, you have to be at least somewhat good at reading body language, seeing if somebody is into it or not. The more technical people out there, the more introverted people out there, people like me, it's harder for us. But the more extrovert, the more intuitive people out there, you will be able to pick up on all kinds of cues and the vibe. And that will inform you how you're doing. Okay? So that's another aspect to this. And finally, to really take this to the nth degree, okay? The sort of more refined version of that last example question I gave, can you describe the types of people that are generally successful in this role? You could go a step further to what I consider sort of the pinnacle question that you could ask. And I would only ask this once again if you had a sort of good vibe in the interview. It seemed very positive. It seemed like they really liked you. Okay. The question is, have you seen anything in other candidates that you haven't yet seen in me that I could perhaps speak to? Okay. That's a good question. But as I said, I would only ask that if you got a good vibe, if it was really clicking. Okay. Because now you're asking the interviewer to be candid about you, be honest about you. Okay. Something they generally aren't, right? But if everything's been going really well, you can ask this. I famously, this is famous in my own mind, okay? I famously asked this in a CEO interview I did many years ago for a job I did not get. I was up for the CEO role in a company. It was actually a string of companies, and I did not get it. But what I thought was really cool was when they tell you didn't get it, I didn't feel bad at all not because I didn't want the job. It was a great job, but because they were so awesome at delivering bad news. These people were masters of communication and masters of people skills. I've met a few of these people in my life, just absolute masters. I'm honestly jealous of their abilities. And I'd asked this question in the interview. I said, look, have you seen anything in other candidates that you haven't yet seen in me that I could still speak to, while we're here? And they said, yeah, actually, you have all these things. It's great. You have this. That's really great. You're very strong in this area. But, this job really requires someone that has this. And it was like a Rolodex, like a sort of a contact list. Lots of connections in this industry. And you don't really have that, as far as I can tell. And I'd said, you know what? You're absolutely right. That's a fair assessment. So in that case, well, I wouldn't say it didn't work for me. The question worked, but I didn't get it. Now, this is a great question to ask because if they've seen, they're looking for requirements. Recruiters look for requirements, and if they've seen that you're very strong in a lot of them, but they haven't picked up on the fact that you have this, okay? And that's something that happens quite often because while you're talking, a lot of times they're writing your information down. They're trying to write your answer down. They're thinking of the next question, right? Things like this. So they miss the part when you say, I have this. Okay, maybe it's written on your resume and you assume that they've got that. But they don't. This is rather common. It happens a lot more than you think. Okay? So this question can fix that problem. If you're about to walk out of the room and even though you said it, they didn't register the fact that you have this thing that they're looking for, this is like the catch-all for those. Okay, so that's why that's a very powerful question to ask too. But as I say, I would only ask it if you got a good vibe. If it's been kind of awkward and you don't feel super comfortable in that whole interview situation, it's not like you're among friends, feels very forced, I would not ask the question because they won't be honest with you anyway, most likely. So, yeah. Okay, but that's a great question. So that's several questions that you could ask, okay, that are great. You don't have to memorize all of these, just it's good to have three. Okay. Now let's get to you here. I think this is where I left off. Shirley, this is where I left off. Shirley L. I had the first interview 2 days ago. The interviewer and I both didn't disclose the salary range expectation. Next week, I'll have a second interview. Should I tell them my expected salary this time? All things being equal, I would say no. Like, don't discuss salary until you get an offer. That's the general rule. Because, look, if you want more money and you tell them this, okay, before they've decided they want you, the only result is they'll just eliminate you and go with somebody else. Let's go with this person. They don't want as much money, right? We haven't decided who we want. We've got 5 candidates. We whittled it down to 5, okay? But this one wants this much money. These 2 want this much money. So let's just eliminate this person, and then we can focus on the other 4, right? That's usually how it goes, okay? You don't want to reveal salary expectations until you get the offer in your hand, okay? And once again, watch the #1 most popular video on my channel, which is the best answer to what are your salary expectations. Resist giving a number. Don't give a number. Usually, that's when everything goes wrong. The moment you give a number, that's when everything goes wrong. Either they eliminate you or they've locked you into a really low salary that you could have made a lot more. They were willing to give you more, but you said this number. You were afraid that you would price yourself out of the market, so you said a lower number, and bam, that's what they end up paying you. And it's hard to get out of later because then, if you turn around later and say, well, I want more money, then it's like, well, wait a minute. We asked you how much money you wanted. You said a little bit. You said this number. We're giving you this number, or like 2,000 more than it, or whatever, That's when everything goes wrong. So resist. Resist. Armin says, I have a second interview coming up this week. I'm wanting to transition from my current sales job to this analytical role. The job posting requires 2 years of analytical experience, which I don't have. How should I approach this knowing that I don't meet the job requirements? The 2 years of analytical experience, which I don't have. Well, look. If you absolutely don't have what they need, there's not too much you can do. But there's a big but here. And that is, look, if you don't technically have this analytical experience, but you have something similar, you have a substitute for it. You're looking for 2 years analytical experience in this setting, in this type of, role. Okay. Well, look, I don't have that, but what I do have is the equivalent of 2 years or 3 years analytical experience total in my career in other roles. Each of these other roles I've had, there's a component of the role where I've had to do analytical type work. I have that. Okay? So if you can say something like that, truthfully, then do it. Don't say, I don't have this. You say, yes, I've got it. I've got like analytical type work. It's been in other roles, but it's basically been the same as you do in this role. Okay? The bottom line is that if I get this, if I'm in this role, that won't be an issue. I have my analytical chops down. Something like that. Excuse me. So if you can say anything like that, if you could offer any substitute for this analytical experience, okay, then say it. The reality is that, you see, you're talking about having a second interview for this role. Now, look, generally speaking, if they believed that you weren't technically qualified for the role, they wouldn't be inviting you to an interview. They would have screened you out before it got to the interview stage, okay? So that's signaling to me, the fact that they've invited you for an interview, that signals to me that this requirement is not a deal breaker. It's not a showstopper, okay? So all you have to do is go to the interview and convince them that, it's not an issue. Maybe you've never done this work, but look, you're a smart person. You've done analytical work in school. You've done analytical work on some other projects you've done in your life. It's never been a problem for you in the past. You're technically qualified to do it. You know the math or the business or whatever it is, right? So focus on that, okay? It's going to require a little bit of preparation, okay? Don't go in there and say, oh, yeah, I don't have that. I'm sorry. I don't have this requirement. No experience in an analytical role like you're wanting. Don't say that. That's going to be okay. They'll just eliminate you, right? Because obviously it's a problem, right? By the way that you are presenting it. They've seen your resume. They've seen your application, presumably. They still invited you for an interview. That means this is not some show-stopping issue to them. Don't convince them that it is, okay? That's what I would say. That's all you can do, okay? Best of luck. Put it this way, look, I try not to talk about myself too much, but look, if this makes you feel better, I had never been a teacher in my life. I'd never got any educational credentials. I'd never done any public speaking credentials, things like this, okay? I was a business guy. And I went back after being a consultant for a few years, and I approached the university in my hometown. And I said, look, I'd love to do some teaching. If you have any teaching positions open for business or HR or whatever, let me know. I'd be interested in doing it. And they said, okay, come in for an interview. So I came in for an interview and I said, look, I've never taught in a university before. I've never taught in a school before. Okay. But I've done public speaking. I've, been a business leader for, X many years. I've had to train people. I've had to evangelize different business initiatives and things and motivate people and all this kind of stuff. I honestly don't think it's beyond me to teach a class. It's an extension of what I already can do. But full disclosure, I've never been a teacher before. I don't have any educational credentials. And they gave me the job. And I started doing some teaching for a few years. So, you know what I mean? If they don't consider it a problem, don't go into the interview and then convince them it's a problem. Okay, that would be my default sort of approach to that situation. Okay, you're a smart person, I'm sure. You can overcome challenges. You can learn. You're trainable. So, I don't think it's a problem. Yeah, but I'm already, okay, Triple X Gaming. Yeah, I'm already employed, but they keep asking me about the gap in 2020. Well, look, if you're already employed, you say, yeah, just, it was COVID. It was disruptive. There was a bit of a transition there as my company was panicking, downsizing, this kind of thing, but But it's obviously not a problem. I mean, I was hired after that, because there was no issue. The results speak for itself. They might ask about it as long as you don't confirm there's any kind of issue there. Once again, if they invited you for an interview and you've already disclosed this prominently on your resume, presumably it's not a showstopper. Okay? It's not a real issue. Don't make it an issue in the interview. Thank you, Odipity. That's very nice of you to say. Somebody outside my window is going with sounds like a hammer on metal. They're like banging in metal spikes or rebar or something like that. Hopefully that's not too disruptive for you guys. Rodrigo says, "Hello, Bill. I just watched some of your videos a couple months ago. Left my previous unhealthy job and I just got a new one. Thank you for your tips for the interviews." Thank you. My pleasure, Rodrigo. You did it yourself. Great job. You're obviously awesome. Everybody feels like it's the end of the world when they're unemployed. And I'm not trivializing it. I'm just saying that's how it feels. But then you get a job and you're overjoyed. You were that awesome all along. You had that value all along. It's just we're reading into situations. We think it's like the rejection. A lot of people are just not equipped to handle rejection. I don't think anybody is perfectly. If you are, you're a sociopath. But some are better than others. And as you grow up, you realize as you get older, you realize that it's not really that much to do with me. It's just the situation. It depends what these people are looking for. And if they're looking for something silly and I don't measure up, that's not really much of a negative. It's actually kind of a compliment, So, way to go, Rodrigo. We got Odipity. Odipity. That's a great name. Once again, it just rolls off the tongue. I'm 15 years into my career, never used LinkedIn. How do I start a LinkedIn without my current employer thinking I'm moving on to other company, which I'm planning on doing? Here's what you do. You ignore them because they don't care. The only thing you really need to do is not put on your profile anything to do with, I'm looking for a job. Okay? There's like a little setting that you can click, that you can turn on for your profile, where it's like a flag that says, currently looking for a job. Don't turn that on. Even if you're not scared about your employer realizing this, don't turn that on. That does a lot of harm for you if you're trying to use LinkedIn to network, right? Somebody contacts you. Imagine this. Somebody contacts you. You don't know them. But they say very nice things. They say, hey, Mr. Odipity, it's great to meet you. I see that you have skills in this area. I think that's awesome. I have an ambition to also work in that area. Do you think I would be able to ask you a few questions? Let's say somebody sent you that message. They're very polite, very professional. Okay. That's a very benign message, right? But then you do the natural thing. You go and look at their profile. You click on their name and see their profile because you're thinking, who is this person? I don't know them. Who are they that's contacting me? And the first thing you see on their profile is like, oh, they're looking for a job. Now, what do you think? You might think, oh, okay, maybe they're only trying to talk to me to see if they're hiring at my company to try and get a job through me. They're not really interested in talking to me. They just want the job, right? And you're like, oh, okay, maybe I'm less interested in responding to them now. But if they don't have that flag, they're currently employed, they're doing fine, they're not looking, or they're not giving any indications they're looking, you would probably take them more at face value. They are interested in learning about the industry. They want to ask you a couple of questions. They're saying very nice things. Sure, I could spare a little bit of time. If you want to grab a coffee or you want to have a phone call or, whatever, right? So that little flag on LinkedIn, I universally sort of recommend that no matter what your situation, don't put that on. It supposedly, might do something that, alerts recruiters that you're looking or something. I don't know. But I don't think it really matters in the long run. It doesn't really give you that much advantage, in my opinion. Okay, so just go ahead and create a profile and put your work experience and education and stuff on there. Come up with a tagline, like what is it that you do? Okay, and don't worry about your company. You can have a LinkedIn profile. There's nothing, like a company doesn't have control over that. Like, okay, if you then go on LinkedIn and post a bunch of inappropriate things or say some very controversial things, that's one thing. But just having a LinkedIn profile, that's perfectly okay. It's not suspicious. A lot of people are on LinkedIn. Okay? So don't feel any intimidation, okay, in even creating a presence on LinkedIn. In my opinion, based on my knowledge and experience and my own experiences like doing it. I think I know where I am, and then the whole feed goes like that, so I lose it a little bit. I think I'm here. Rodrigo. Hello, Bill. I just watched some of your videos a couple of months ago. You just did it a couple of months ago. Okay. Left my previous unhealthy job, and I just got a new one. Thanks to you for your tips. Thank you. Did I already read that? I thought I read that. But my pleasure, Rodrigo. Okay. Yeah, here we go. Sorry, you guys have to just be patient with me. I'm an old guy, and I'm looking at small text. Old man, small text, that kind of thing. Thank you, Siri. You're the best teacher. We need to promote your channel. Thanks, Paul. I appreciate that. Gobin? Is that how you say it? Gobin? Thank you, Bill, for all the encouragement. Very inspiring. What would be the key to moving to a job outside your primary domain? For example, getting into customer engagement from a financial role. What would be the key to moving to a job outside your primary? Well, there's many ways you could do it. Okay, one possibility is to get a job that's like a financial job that also deals with customers. Okay. So you're hired for your financial chops, and based on that, it's reasonable to hire you. And if you have a passion or a desire to do the customer side, that might be enough to get you in that job. Then you can transition from there into pure customer service if that's what you want to do. The most obvious thing that I always talk about, you guys are probably sick of hearing me talk about, is get a job through networking. Get a job like on what's known as the hidden job market, where you just contact people. I told you guys a story about 10 minutes ago about me getting a teaching job, when I didn't have any previous teaching credentials, but they hired me anyway. Usually the opposite of what you would do properly, like the official HR handbook for hiring a candidate. But as we all know, that's usually bypassed. Okay? The people in charge can hire who they want. And if someone comes to them voluntarily and says, look, I'm passionate about this. I got some great skills. I think I'd make a great teacher or customer service person, a lot of times if they're looking for someone, they say, hey, let's interview you first. Just because you're right in my face. Just because you're here. Instead of spending money on finding people like you that would want to be in this role, you're already here. So let's talk to you first. That's networking. Okay? You don't have to know these people from palling around with them. You contact them. One method is LinkedIn. Another method is, going to events, right? Industry events, trade shows, job fairs, that kind of stuff. Okay? So tap that networking method, because that is the way usually people change careers. Think about it. If you have a career in one area and you want to jump to a whole other career, you want to do a different thing. Okay? I'm an airline pilot but I want to take up a new career in banking. Okay? Something different. If you were to go by the HR handbook, they would ask you to submit an application and they would look at, what are they going to look at? Years of experience. How many years of experience do you have in banking? Well, 0. I'm changing careers. I have no experience in banking. And they go, well, forget it then, right? You know? If that's how people got hired all the time, no one would ever change careers. You wouldn't be able to, right? So this is how people change careers. They get it through networking. They say, look, okay, I've been an airline pilot for 20 years, okay? But I do have, I don't know, a degree in finance or something. I've never worked in banking, or I've taken an accounting course or whatever, but I've never worked in banking. But I've been passionate about banking. For the last couple of years, I've learned everything I can about banking, and I'd love to start a new career in banking. If ever you're looking for someone, please consider me. If you've got like a teller job or some lower level job, if you're looking for somebody, I'm very competent. And the person might think, okay, this person doesn't have any experience in banking, but they're passionate. I've met them. They're professional. They're charismatic. They're easy to deal with. And like I know from their previous career as being an airline pilot for 20 years that they are reliable, responsible. They're used to positions of authority and being able to handle it. They can conduct themselves appropriately. They're punctual, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Right? They have all those qualities. So yeah, I'll take a chance on them. Right? That's how people change careers. So Gobin, it sounds like you're in a minor version of that. So if you've never looked at the sort of networking way of getting a job, check it out. For what it's worth, if you're looking for a starting point, I have some videos on my channel, but I also have a course, this course. And you could take my course and I talk about multiple ways of getting a job, going through traditional standard job interviews like we've been talking about today, how to do your resume, all that stuff. But I also talk about networking. That's a component in this course. Okay, I give you scripts. I give you step-by-step kind of the process to get you started. So if that's of any interest to you, check that out. Thank you for all these tips, and I will continue to apply them as soon as I get the job. No problem. LOL, I have it on. Oh, this is Gabriel. I have it on, or I'll get rid of it. Thanks, Bill. Yeah, no problem. Maria says, sometimes any job can come to you simply because the universe desires it. Look, a huge factor in this is probability, random probability. We make opportunities for ourselves, okay? And there's a lot we can do. We can hone our skills, we can rehearse, we can present ourselves very favorably. On top of that, we can go pursue opportunities. This is the world of business. The world of business is creating opportunities, pursuing them. A big part of that is networking. Now, here's an introvert talking to you about networking. Extroverts live in that world, okay? I just visited. I guess I'm living in it more now that I'm on YouTube. But yeah, there's a lot we can do. But there's a huge component of probabilities. It's like in the world of finance, same thing. It's all about risk and return. What are the odds that this is going to happen in the future? What are the odds that that's going to happen in the future? You set yourself up most favorably as you can, and then you're playing the odds. Okay? For example, if I do this, there's a 50% chance I could get hired in the next 12 months. but you improve your resume, you improve your LinkedIn profile, you add networking as a method of getting a job, then you increase it. There's a 70% chance I could get hired in 6 months if I do it this way, right? Let's really focus on doing awesome interviews. Work on my self-confidence, work on my public speaking, work on my negotiation skills. There's, then it goes up to 80% chance I'll get hired in the next 6 months, right? So it still is down to probabilities. Okay, we prepare the best we can, and then it's a numbers game. And I know a lot of you guys realize this, and I know a lot of you guys get it. You're welcome, Edver. Edver, it's great to see you here. Yes. So there you are. We've gotten to the end of the stream or the end of the comment feed. So that's probably a good. Oh, I got one more. If you see what I'm saying, I've got one more thing to say on the topic, which is how to answer the question, do you have any questions for us? Okay. In a job interview, the last thing you say in the job interview should be, where do we go from here? Because that's going to clear up a lot of uncertainty for you. Are they going to get back to you? Are you expected to follow up with them? Like when will they make a decision approximately? Is it going to be in 1 day or is it going to be in 3 months? Where do we go from here? That's a great way as the last thing you say in the job interview. Okay. And then they say, okay, well, if we decide to move forward, you will hear from us within 5 days, by Friday or by next Wednesday, something like that. And then you know where you stand. Then you know what's going on. Okay. It takes the guesswork out of it. Have they made a decision? Should I follow up? Okay. So always remember that. The last thing you say is, where do we go from here? Okay. And I did a video on this a long time ago where I also talked about sending a thank you note. It's not really the same topic. It's kind of related to it. But, you can send a thank you note. It doesn't do any harm. People ask me, should I send a thank you note? I'd say yes. Look, you're not really risking anything by doing it. Okay. Just do it. You can have a template thank you note and just sort of change the names and all that. Number one, make sure that the spelling and grammar are perfect. Make sure it's polite and it's professional. Don't start it with saying, hey, what's up? What up, dog? Or any other expression from the 1980s that, I think are au courant, but people laugh at me for. Like have it be professional. And if you don't know what to say, you could say 3 things. You could say, number one, it was very, very nice to have met you. Okay. Then say something nice about the interaction. Okay. Like, let's say there's something that they did in the interview that you thought was good. Thank you for doing this. It made me feel more comfortable in the interview. That was very nice of you. And then the third thing is the future. I look forward to interacting with you again. Or should you need anything, please don't hesitate to let me know and I'll be happy to oblige. Okay, so very nice to have met you. Say something nice to them that they did. Okay. When you invited me in, before the interview began, I thought that was great. Made me feel very at ease. Thank you so much. Right? That it gives them a reason to read it. Okay. And then finally, the future. I look forward to speaking with you again, or should you need anything, please let me know. Don't hesitate to let me know if you should need anything else. Okay. And no harm in sending it. It can sometimes make a difference. It's not the be all end all, but it can sometimes tip the scales slightly in your favor. Okay. So hopefully that makes sense. I'm just gonna do the last couple of comments and then that's it for today. Ahmed says, thank you for the live session. I work in a medical laboratory, or laboratory if you're in the UK, for 10 years, and now I want to change to a medical company that's specialized in medical equipment. What's the first step? Well, learn all you can about the medical devices industry. It's not my world, but I know that medical devices is a really hot area for like entrepreneurial type ventures. A lot of smaller companies doing work like startups and things like this. A lot of mid-sized companies that are more established doing it. I imagine it's quite a bit different from the culture of like large organizations in the medical profession, like hospitals and things like this. So it's a different world. But I would say check out networking. You could start by making contacts with people in that industry. If in your hometown, you can go on LinkedIn, you could do a people search for medical devices and do a company search, do a people search for the individuals, and just start connecting with people. If you're second degree connections or something like that, just say, we have some connections in common. I'd very much like to connect with you. Right? I mean, that's a huge question to sort of get into. Okay. But you could start by doing that. That'll lay some of the groundwork. Okay. And then just like we were talking about changing careers, because it is sort of a career change. I mean, you're still in the medical profession, but you're in a completely different part of the medical profession. So you could treat it like a career change and look at networking rather than traditional ways of hiring. And you'd have a higher degree of success, I imagine, because as I say, medical devices is more startups and smaller companies a lot of the time. And they're not a slave to large corporate HR handbooks, nor do they generally have like strong unions or anything with a lot of union rules. That's not really that world. So it's kind of like if you're passionate and you have the technical chops and you just get it, you understand the culture, then you can transition to that as far as I know. Okay, so start doing the research, start connecting with people in that industry. You might want to consider doing informational interviews. Go and sit down with some executive or owner of a medical devices company. Just say, I'm interested to learn about this industry. And I know you're an expert. I'd very much like to ask you a few questions about it. Could you spare half an hour of your time? And if you approach people properly, they'll say, sure, yeah. I have some time right here, if you want to drop by, sure. And now you're talking to these people. Now they know you. And, it's a two-way thing. You primarily get to learn about that industry. They become aware of you, right? So if they happen to be looking for somebody with your type of expertise, if they could use you, and you would like to work for them, you've got a personal connection. They know who you are. And after these meetings, the great thing about it is that, what you do when you go to these meetings, one of the first things you do is if you have a business card, which you can print for like extremely little money, like $10. Okay, you have a business card, and this is me, this is my title, this is my contact information, this is what I do. You exchange business cards. And when you leave these meetings, you say, if I ever have any questions in the future, would I be able to give you a call? And 99% of the time, people say, sure. So now you have sort of, you're developing a contact list of people in the industry that you want to move to, where you can pick up the phone and ask a question and get an answer from someone who knows, right? So, so all of that, okay, starts with doing the networking thing. Once again, if you are interested, I actually cover that like step by step where's my finger? In that course. Okay. Link in the description. So if that is something you're interested in. So that's an option. But that's what I would say. Okay. So thank you very much for being here. You guys are awesome. I wish you nothing but the best. Remember, job interviews are a numbers game, and don't get stung by the rejection. If you've been rejected a few times for a job, you are a lot more valuable than you feel right now, and things are a lot more promising than they appear. Okay? So thank you so much. You guys are awesome. I will be here again with another live stream on Wednesday. It's going to be a business one. It's going to be called Let's Talk Business, where we don't necessarily talk about job interviews, but we talk about business and careers and making money and that kind of stuff in a larger sense. So if you're interested in that, come and join me for that on Wednesday. And until then, take care of yourselves. Thanks.